Hello, and welcome to the Music Room. I'm Sam Fuhrman, percussionist, timpanist, and assistant conductor for the Newark Symphony Orchestra. And today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite percussion instruments, the marimba. Now, to be fair, the marimba is not one of the most common instruments to be found in the orchestra, at least not until recently. But you've almost certainly seen its older cousin, the xylophone. And the xylophone is a very old instrument indeed. So old, in fact, it was named in Greek, XYLO, xylo, for the Greek root for wood. Phone, of course, meaning sound, so xylophone is a sounding wood. The xylophone is actually an African instrument that traces its roots to tribes in North and West Africa. The marimba dates from the middle of the last millennium, when many Africans were displaced to the Western Hemisphere through the African slave trade. And many of these victims of the slave trade brought pieces of their culture with them or attempted to recreate them here in the Western Hemisphere. For instance, they attempted to recreate the musical instruments that they had, and in the process blended some of their culture with the culture that existed here, along with, importantly, the natural resources that were available here, as opposed to those in Africa. So, of course, you have access to different types of wood, and in that process evolved the new instrument that they called the marimba, which is a Bantu word. It doesn't have any other meaning, it just means marimba. You might say it's the Bantu word for xylophone. So to recap, the xylophone is an African instrument with a Greek name. The marimba is a Latin American instrument with an African name. Go figure. Now, if you've seen one of these videos before, you may be wondering why I'm not holding the instrument up to display it for you. Well, the simple reason for that is that this sucker is about 8 feet long, and I couldn't hold it up for you if I was John Cena. So now, let's step back, the two of us, and take a look at this instrument together. This is the marimba. As you can see, it's quite a formidable instrument. The heart of the instrument is these individual wooden bars, each one hand-carved and tuned specifically to a particular note. And as you can see, they're strung together on a piece of string or a yarn and suspended above these metal tubes, which amplify and focus the sound. These tubes are called resonators, and they are very heavy. The whole thing is held up by a sturdy frame made primarily of metal. Now, this particular frame is extra heavy duty with inflatable tires because it's designed to be taken outside for things like marching bands and parades. Although this is a particularly high quality instrument, and I probably wouldn't take it outside because it wouldn't fare well, particularly in this kind of weather. Now, the basic construction of the xylophone and the marimba is essentially the same. It's the same basic mechanics. The major difference between the two is primarily size. The marimba, or to be specific, the bars of the marimba, are substantially larger than those of the xylophone, resulting in deeper tone, a lower pitch, and this is key, the bars themselves are more fragile, and as a result, the mallets that we use for the two are very different. Whereas for a xylophone, you might use a hard rubber mallet, plastic, or even solid wood. The marimba mallet that we use is usually a core of wood or hard rubber wrapped in yarn. And this produces, overall, a deeper, rounder, softer tone. Now, you may have noticed that the bars of the marimba are laid out identically to the keys of a piano keyboard. 2 ranks corresponding to the white keys and the black keys. This provides a full chromatic range. Now, the actual range, in terms of from the high to the low, varies from instrument to instrument. It's not standardized. There are a number of different ranges available by most makers. The upper end is pretty well standardized to be double high C, that is to say 1, 2, 3 C's above middle C, or 1 octave below the upper extreme of a piano. The low end is where it gets mighty interesting. You'll find some marimbas that have the low extreme be the C directly below middle C. making for a full 4-octave instrument. Perhaps even more common is to extend the lower end of the range by another 3 half steps down to the A below that. Now this instrument goes all the way down to the E below that. And most makers do have at least one model that goes all the way down to the C below that, below the bass clef staff, for a total of a 5-octave range, which is really something nice to play with. Now, because of its range and because of its chromaticism, it's actually become a very favorite instrument for transcribers. And most people who come up through conservatories or university music schools studying the instrument spend a lot of time playing transcriptions from other works that were composed, for instance, for piano or guitar, such as this by Isaac Albeniz. Something like that. Also, very popular for the instrument is to transcribe music for unaccompanied string instruments, such as those Baroque works by J.S. Bach and others. For instance, this sonata for unaccompanied violin that I play 1 octave below its original composition. And that's the marimba. Thank you so much for joining me today, and watch this channel for more Newark Symphony Orchestra content.